Latino, which is today. And so the main thing about Experiencing Sabor Latino is that our guest pretty much should be someone who is of Hispanic or Latino descent. So when I first, got your email and so forth, I didn't even bother to ask you if you were Hispanic or Latino, but that didn't matter. It was what I seen after that in terms of the Hispanic radio conference that caught my attention right away. So even I were talking the other day, and she actually seen your name, and she said she's probably Italian. I asked you, and you said you were Italian. So I said on the when I posted the show for today, on our Facebook for yesterday, I said, you know what, Italian's close enough. So on that.
Thank you. I think so. We're both big on family,
yes,
and culture and food.
That's right. Amen to that. Yes.
And that'll work. And so today we are going to be talking about radio. For Deborah Parenti is the executive vice president and publisher of Radio Inc. and other projects that we're going to be talking about today. So we thank you for, like I said, being our guest, and we're going to get right into the conversation. First of all, I usually like to ask our guest to tell our streamers and our listeners something about yourself that has nothing to do with what we are going to talk about today.
Oh my! Well, I like to do a lot of traveling and I have a certificate, surprisingly enough, in home decorating that I got from Philadelphia University when I was not working in radio for a while. But I'm very, very involved with my family. I have two sons who absolutely, they walk on water to me. I think something that Italians share with the Hispanic culture, motherhood is very dear to us. And I love to cook. And after I finish talking to you, I'm going to be getting a meal prepared for some guests on Monday evening, which will consist of some Italian dishes such as melanzana, which is a stuffed eggplant, and a couple other things. So that's kind of the up close and personal side. Oh. But my second love beyond that is radio. Has been for many, many years. I ran stations both in Dayton, Philadelphia, and Louisville, and have enjoyed a wonderful career and wonderful relationship.
Very good. So you are the publisher then for a magazine called Radio Inc.
Right. That I kind of fell into thanks to the Hispanic radio conference that I think we're going to be talking about.
So what is Radio Inc.?
Radio Inc. is a broadcast radio audio trade publication. When we get into obviously beyond radio, today radio and its many platforms, Ustream, for example. So we cover a lot of issues regarding everything from streaming to podcasting, anything audio. But it's roots are in radio, and it was started 28 years ago as a print publication. And that print publication still exists, by the way. We are the only general radio trade publication in print in existence anymore. The rest of them all fell by the wayside over the many years of change and evolution, and quite frankly, recruiting and management. There are some publications that focus more on the programming side, but we cover programming through a manager's lens, a sales rep lens, how do you market and manage and position something like that. And quite frankly, use the programming efforts that are made to help bring it to the bottom line and keep it in business.
Okay. Deborah, if you don't mind for a second, we are going to be going to a commercial break.
We'll be right back after these.
We know that people
It's hard for you to focus, huh? With that sound over there.
Well, I was hearing it.
Hey, Facebookers and YouTubers. Buenas tardes, YouTubers and Facebookers. How you guys doing? Happy Friday, Freedom Friday. Woo woo. You feeling free, Juan?
Absolutely. I'll be more free when I'm in front of the TV for the debate.
No, that's not being free.
Yes, it is.
No, it isn't. That's being a
Everyone
prisoner.
has a different
That's being a prisoner to what's happening on the tube. Yes, yes. Yes, yes, yes. En inglés, taca, taca, japonés. Hey, what's up? What's happening? What are you guys doing this weekend? Are you guys having fun? You guys planning some great things this weekend? Hopefully you're planning to be safe and warm, right?
I mean, it's a mild winter.
Very, very mild winter. And I hope you guys didn't complain about that snow from yesterday. Juan, did you?
It wasn't that much.
Did you complain?
I didn't complain.
Because you usually like, oh, did you check out the weather? Or they say it's going to storm. They say it's going to happen here. They say we're going to have 10 inches. Who cares? You know, meteorologists are not always right. You agree? Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. Exactly. I'm going to ask for my family, for people to pray for my family. Pray for my family. One of my cousin's son got shot in Mexico. They can't do anything about it. They said they're just waiting. I just found that out on my way here.
10 seconds.
Okey-dokey, smoking.
And you are back.
Okay, buenas tardes.
Okay, we are back here with Deborah, and she is the publisher for a magazine called Radio Inc. and other major projects that we are going to be talking about. And then once we talk about the projects that she's working on, then we are, or has been a part of, we are going to be talking about the big Hispanic radio conference. And so let me ask you this, Deborah, in terms of Radio Inc., how many subscribers do you have for Radio Inc., roughly?
Our online readership, we send out approximately close to 20,000 emails every day. That's our readership, so to speak. So we have a very, a rather large audience, primarily, again, radio people that are in sales, marketing, and management or have some interest in that, along with owners, operators, CEOs, executives, and things, and just about virtually. We touch just every aspect of the business.
Is it online only, or is there also a hard copy?
No, as I mentioned, we are the only existing print magazine as well. We print 14 times a year. Yep, in print.
Nice.
It's amazing how, for as much as we hear today about the death of a lot of print, even the young people love the print magazine. When they are in that magazine, they want to touch it and feel it and show it to grandma. We recently did a list of the 30 most influential people 30 and under in the business. These are not, necessarily people with just a couple of years, but these are people who have invested in the industry, in careers in the industry, and are now like in management positions, although they're not even 30 yet. And may I mention at this point, I think this will be of interest to your audience. We just did this the first time in December, and the cover of our magazine was a young lady from Spanish Broadcasting System. She was actually the cover of the magazine itself. Her name is, I'm going to give it to you in just a second here. I want to make sure I've got it right. But she is Gabby Insignare, and she's head of AIRS Network over at Spanish Broadcasting System, and she graced the cover of the magazine. How popular was this issue? For the first time in 28 years of printing this magazine, Radio Inc. had to reprint this issue because we ran out of copies.
Oh, wow.
Well, Deborah,
and again, this was somebody 30 and under. That's who this audience was for this issue. Right. We were featuring them, but it was so popular, they were asking for 10 and 20 copies. And we finally ran out, and I went to our executive board at Streamline Publishing, which owns us, and I said, guys, we've got to reprint this issue. We've got a whole year here of people who are going to want this. And these are the future leaders of our industry, these young people. We need to get this magazine in their hands because they're just begging for it. So it said a lot about not only, obviously, our magazine and everything, but to me it said a lot about the dynamic spirit and personality of the young people. And again, I'm very proud it was a Hispanic who was on the cover of that magazine.
When this first magazine came out and so forth, and today being 2020, has there been any major changes to the original first copy?
Well, different personalities grace the cover, whereas it has become more of a business publication over the years.
Okay.
Also, initially, the gentleman who's the owner of our company, Eric Rhodes, who is a name in the overall in the radio industry, he was the original publisher. 5 years ago, he relinquished that title for the first time, and I'm very proud to say he asked me to do that. It was a big thing for him to give that up, but he gave it up, and he gave it to a woman.
Hey,
so,
all right.
Yeah.
That's the best thing I think he did.
We made some strides there. Okay?
That's right.
You also have listed on here as part of the, I guess, work projects that you've been involved with, called the Podcast Business Journal. Talk about that a little bit.
Podcast Business Journal, we developed that back in November of last year. Backtrack. That's in November of 2018. Our editor of Radio Inc., Ed Bryan, came to me and he said, this thing is exploding, meaning the podcasting industry, and we need to cover it like we do radio, and it needs its own separate coverage because podcasting envelops, while certainly there are a lot of major broadcasters and not so major broadcasters involved in podcasting today, there are a lot of, shall we say, there's a huge cottage industry there as well, of podcasters who are in garages, in their bedrooms, their studies, who have just decided, or who are in different businesses outside of broadcasting or anything that's audio, who have decided to do podcasts. Everybody from attorneys to the veterinarian down the street, for example. So there's a huge industry there, and we decided that there was a, shall I say, a swimming lane there for coverage to talk about everything from what podcasters are doing today, what's working, what's not working, what kind of equipment they need, for the newbies in the business, as well as for the more settled ones, how to get advertising for their programs, how to market and position their program, how to get themselves on Apple and iTunes and all the many services that platforms that are used today to broadcast, excuse me, I'm dating myself there, but to air their podcast.
Eve.
Well, first of all, I want to say congratulations to all the accomplishments, and they couldn't have given it to a better person, a woman at that. So that was awesome.
I was tickled with that. Right.
And I think, that is a great opportunity. I'm sure that is opening up doors for you, Deborah. In the last 10 years, what would you say has been the most accomplishments that you've had?
Well, the last 10 years I've been with Radio Inc., and we also have radio, television, business reports, as well as Podcast Business Journal. So I think it's been more. This is kind of what I consider I'm on the end side of my career. I'm not that I'm planning on retiring soon, but I spent 40 years in the radio business as a manager. I was the first woman manager in the Dayton, Ohio market. I cracked the ceiling there. So I feel like I've made a lot of what I've been able to do. I kind of, shall I say, stood on the shoulders of my radio career. And the shoulders of many others, by the way. Obviously, that career was built on. But I've been able, what I'm proudest of is the fact that I've been able to take what I have learned in radio, and I have a real passion for radio, and make that and turn that into being able to mentor and to hopefully, I'd like to think, inspire and or direct other people, especially women, in careers. I'm on the board of the Alliance for Women in Media, and I'm also part of the MIW, which is Mentoring Inspiring Women, which, by the way, was spawned off of a list that Radio Inc. initiated about 20 years ago called the Most Influential Women in Radio, important in the industry. We now we cut the list off. We decided that 50 is all we want to accommodate, because we could literally put hundreds of women on this list, but we want to keep it keep the cachet to it and everything, make it something worth aspiring to. So I'm proud of things like that I am able to be, because even things that I have not perhaps been at the forefront of with Radio Inc., I have been able, I hope, to create or make it better. We have a conference every year called Forecast, which is at the Harvard Club in New York. That conference is, the attendance there is composed of all the leadership of the industry. I'm talking the very top brass from the very top companies, CEOs and executives. I'm proud to say we have a co-chair. We have two co-chairs every year, one from the radio industry. And it was all, you would walk into that room and it was nothing but a sea of black suits, men in black suits, balding men in black suits, okay? Wow. And I put on, not only did I pass the first woman co-chair for that conference, but 2 years ago, I had two women co-chairing it. And again, you're talking about Wall Street, you're talking about, you know, people in these high executive boardroom positions. That makes a tremendous statement. That's not me doing it, but I have the ability to move that in that direction. And those are the things, I'm really proud of that kind of stuff. And I learned all that because of the connections and the people who I learned and I leaned on in over 40 years in the radio industry.
Well, thank you. That's a lot. And congratulations on everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's wonderful to be able to sit and watch things like that continue to develop.
Yes.
And it's the same thing again, I know we're going to come to this eventually, but that the same thing with the Hispanic Radio Conference, to see what that has morphed into over the years is.
Because we are going to talk about the Hispanic Radio Conference, but I do have a question that I asked you before, and in your response, without mentioning the Hispanic Radio Conference, even I have been doing Nuestra Comunidad Northwest Indiana for several years now. We are the only English-Spanish live talk radio program of its kind in Northwest Indiana and beyond. We do not just talk about politics. We talk about business. We talk about entertainment. We talk about all different kinds of subjects because it all has to do with Hispanics, and we talk about issues that maybe don't have to do with Hispanics. So what advice would you give even I in our show, where our mission is to inform, to educate, empower, and sometimes even entertain our listening audience? And we are the only, like I said, bilingual talk program of its kind in Northwest Indiana and beyond. We do have listeners and streamers from not only Indiana and this country, but outside of this country. So what advice would you have for the both of us, without mentioning the Hispanic Radio Conference that we're going to talk about just in a little bit, to help take our program to a higher level?
Well, I think we live in a wonderful world today with great technology. So you don't have to literally go door to door, so to speak, shopping the show or anything like that. I think two things. Number one, it's really important to get on board some good advertisers, because if you have that built into your show already, it makes it much more marketable to other places. There's a need for good, solid syndication, particularly in something like what you're doing, that you can get on a platform, a digital platform, that you can point people in that direction so that they can hear and get a feel for your program. I would be letting every syndicator, getting a list of those, and every syndicator know about that kind of outreach. And again, if you have sponsors, if you can get some, particularly if you could get a regional sponsor involved, that right away adds a lot of, you've got a built-in not only credibility, but that lends a little shine, sizzle to the offering, insofar as being able to get it out there. That's really my best advice. I mean, you've got to, from what the little I've been able to listen to so far, you've got a great, you have a great program. You have it's dynamic, and it crosses over into, as you mentioned, cover a lot of areas. So it's a good talk show, and people are looking for things like that, particularly in quite frankly in smaller central Indiana type markets. There's always that cry. But I would not, by the way, not just syndicators, but a lot of small groups and things like that, to get out there and let them know about it. I think we laugh about word of mouth, but word of mouth now is stream of mouth.
Exactly.
There's
Exactly.
so many opportunities now, so many ways to get it out there. You don't have to send tapes out anymore.
Exactly. Makes it so much simpler, and you can expand a much larger area.
I got one more question, and then I'm going to turn it over to Eve, and then we're going to finish up our program talking about the Hispanic Radio Conference. You want, Deborah? I'm on a multimedia advisory board for the area career center in Hammond, Indiana, where the instructor teaches radio and TV. What advice would you have that I could pass along to the student body there in terms of resources, in terms of information for those students that are attending the area career center to study radio and learn radio? What resources in terms of information do you have that you could pass on to me that I could pass on to them?
Well,
do you know of any resources?
Yeah, all your state associations are wonderful resources. The State Broadcast Association. Indiana has a broadcast.
The Indiana Broadcasters Association.
Yep.
Right, and the Ohio Broadcast Association. Another great resource, there is a college board, and I will get you that information. I'll get you the name of the contact there. But there is a college board. In fact, I'm on the advisory board, and the name is escaping me right now. The exact acronym is like CAD, but I will send that to you.
That'll work.
Then BEA, there's Broadcast Education Association. BEA is a wonderful, again, they work with colleges and universities. Any college that has, I know you're on the advisory board, but any of your major universities that have broadcasting programs available are also good resources. A lot of them have job banks. A lot of them have student stations and things where they're, for those that are interested in going that route, which is, always a good thing to do. But those are the primary resources for something like that. But I would definitely keep in touch or get in touch with the state associations and find out what resources they may have. A lot of them have things available, programs available, or they put on seminars and things like that.
Okay.
Also, Dan Valley does a school that's wonderful. They have an institute. They work with Beasley Broadcasting, for example, on that.
Thank you so much.
On your broadcast with Radio Inc., what sort of, or first of all, do you have anything that's geared or targeted to the Latino Hispanic community? I know that Ohio is rapidly growing with Latinos, with Hispanics. A lot of my clients are coming from Ohio to Chicago, so that's how I know it's increasing. Is there anything of that in your program, in Radio Inc.?
That is what the Hispanic Radio Conference is. That is another product that we will be bringing out sometime in the spring that would be specifically targeted for the Hispanic audience. So those are things that are constantly on, an evolutionary, like trying to find the right vehicle so that we can disseminate more solid information about Hispanic broadcasting to broadcasters, both radio and television, by the way.
Okay.
Okay, Deborah, if we can go on now to, well, I guess before we go on now to, I see the commercial sign. So if you can hold on 1 second, ladies and gentlemen, we are about to go to a commercial break.
We'll be back. Does that mean no? I didn't have to go, nothing else. Just that.
Mi nombre es Jocelyn, soy de México, Michoacán. Vine acá en el 2012.
You guys are enjoying, are you nervous or something? You got 3 waters now. You talking about me being thirsty. All I did was brought 2 bottles. You already had 3. You trying to open mine?
If you put it right here, I might grab it.
Mine's very cold because I had them in the trunk.
It wasn't easy. She had to learn
I got a case and a half.
Cheers. Water does a body good more than a milk. But it depends on what water. Because there's some bottled water that are not as healthy.
And she did.
And it's probably the same as sink water.
She completed her citizenship on the same day.
Thank you, Woodville. for providing an Excel center so I can follow my dreams.
Now's the time to develop your career at Excel Center, a free high school for adults. Earn a diploma with flexible class schedules and free childcare. Enroll today at excelcenterhs.org.
Steve's Tire Service Center reminds motorists every 6 days a tow truck driver is killed while helping stranded motorists on the road while driving. Avoid distractions like texting. Keep a lookout for tow truck drivers.
Then you send me another.
It already has that.
Driving cautiously may
I don't remember.
Greg's tomorrow. I mean, Sunday.
Service Center for
Okay, so when I remember for sure.
When she was into politics, she was in LULAC.
942
Way back when.
5080. Very quick with the right staff to take care of your car. Call 815-942-5080 for Steve's Tire and Service Center at
unless you had other major
514 Liberty
issues,
Street in
Or
Morris.
had but did not know he had.
Now in Northwest Indiana, we're
Sometimes
proud to
that's when
introduce
things come out.
a futuristic transportation service
Frank,
owned and
next door
operated by
neighbor was
Emmanuel Smith.
59,
Emmanuel
but he had
Smith has
other
more than
major
20
No,
years of experience
I'm
in
just
the
saying
transportation
that.
business.
But
So if
I'm saying you can
The
call
ball
at
can
59.
open up to
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
You know,
Call
it's
Agape
sad
at
to say.
219-588-8548.
I don't see anything pertaining to
Once
what my
again, that's
question
Agape at 219-588-8548. Agape
So it's
will
not
provide you with a
catered
prompt,
to that
convenient,
yet.
and courteous service. Call Agape
What
at
do you think?
219-588-8548.
30 seconds.
30 seconds.
All right. Welcome to Nuestra Comunidad Nuestra Indiana, aquí en vivo desde los estudios in Gary, Indiana. My Facebookers and YouTubers. Why are you yelling anyway? Don't yell.
I'm talking
Lower
to
down
you,
your voice.
and it has to do with work, I guess,
I don't know.
because we are back here on Nuestra Comunidad, Northwest Indiana, the only English-Spanish live talk radio program of its kind in Northwest Indiana and beyond, streaming on our Facebook for Nuestra Comunidad, Northwest Indiana, streaming on our YouTube channel for Nuestra Comunidad, Northwest Indiana, and right now on the radio at 92.7 FM, right out of the heart of Gary, Indiana. We are talking to the Executive Vice President and Publisher of Radio Inc. and Radio and Television, was that Business Reports and so forth.
Right.
Very good. And of course, the podcast Business Journal. And what? Let me say this real quickly. Would you recommend for like students from the area Career Center that are studying radio to, because this is something I think that would work for them too. Would you recommend to start to learn first and get information about and start doing podcasting at home to help them provide themselves with some kind of resume to get into radio?
Well, yeah, yes. I want to qualify that. They
Yes.
are two totally separate kinds of platforms.
Okay.
Podcasting is time shifted. Radio is not. In other words, one mistake that a lot of radio stations and radio personalities make is thinking that they can take a morning show and turn it into a podcast. In other words, just pre-record it and make it a podcast, and it doesn't work that way. However, the audio skills and the interviewing skills, by the way, they should be listening to you.
Right.
Because you alone are giving, both of you, great examples of great interviewing techniques, if that's the kind of programming somebody's going to do. Obviously, music shows are a little different, but to listen to people, to professionals such as yourself. And may I also say, all of our publications, our dailies anyway, are all free. They should subscribe to our publications. That allows them to read about the industry as well, particularly on the podcasting side, for those that are getting into that brand new platform.
Very good. So let's go ahead now, Deborah, and talk about the Hispanic Radio Conference. First of all, when did the Hispanic Radio Conference start, and what is the main purpose of the Hispanic Radio Conference?
Okay, the Hispanic Radio Conference was a dream of Eric Rhodes, our founder. In 2006, I'm sure you remember the march in Los Angeles that was led by some radio personalities, including Peelan, a rather famous broadcaster, morning show man. Eric watched this march, and as he did so, he thought to himself that if they could put over about 1 million people peacefully on the street demonstrating around a cause, why couldn't we bring Hispanic radio broadcasters, individual companies who did not really work well together, quite frankly? Why not bring them together on one umbrella? What kind of, the strength in numbers philosophy, that there would be greater strength if they would work together. So he decided that he wanted to do that. He called me, and I was, quite frankly, enjoying my off time, enjoying my decorating. He said, "Have you got 2 weeks you can give me?" I said, "Sure." 2 weeks, 13 years later, I don't know if 2 weeks is up, but I don't count very well. But the bottom line is, we established that conference. We had a board. The board, by the way, is all Hispanic broadcasters and Hispanic broadcast attorneys and researchers and things like that. So we get a lot of input. In fact, we get all of our input from the Hispanic broadcast community. So we designed a 2-day conference. The first year was in San Antonio. We established awards also, the Medallas de Cortez Award. Which are named for Raul Cortez. I don't know if you know his story, but he was the first to put a Spanish station on in the United States in 1946, KCOR. He sold eggs, and he bought time like you do on a radio station. And he did that to sell eggs. He was so successful with it, he decided to buy a radio station. There was some problems that he had initially because that was right after the war, and there were some legislators that did not want, quote, a foreign person to own a station there. He fought that successfully and was able to establish the station. That said, he is who the awards were named for, and we were very fortunate the first year when we handed those awards out, we had his children there. They're obviously older now, but they were able to be present for the first award ceremony.
Okay, so they're
the only awards, by the way, for Hispanic radio people.
Where's this conference taken at this year? And what, for anyone that attends the conference, what are some of the highlights of what they would be seeing at this conference?
Well, the conference this year is March 25th and 26th. In Miami at the Intercontinental at Doral. Speaking of those awards, we occasionally, not every year, but when appropriate, we have a Distinguished Leadership Award handed out. This year, the recipient is Emilio Estefan. I'm sure your audience is familiar with him, Gloria and Emilio Estefan. He has been awarded many awards, including 9 Grammy Awards. We will have sessions on digital, on how to make the most of digital aspects. There's sessions on getting through to decision makers. We have a session, a great, what I call the legal financial session that will target things such as minority tax certificates, the potential for further deregulation, which right now seems to be derailed, other matters that are extremely important to Hispanic radio broadcasters. And we will also be discussing the economics behind the political advertising that will be coming down for 2020, which is supposed to be the largest windfall ever. How to secure a bigger portion. We've got a great panel on that. It specifically focuses on the Hispanic side of that buy.
Well, it sounds like a great opportunity for those people that I think would be a good opportunity for networking and getting to meet people in the Hispanic CEOs and so forth in the industry, which, like I said, would be a great opportunity for others that are maybe trying to, like I said, take their programs to bigger and better levels. So I know I've seen that the package right now to register is like a little bit over $600. What's involved in the package?
It's registration for the 2-day conference, and that includes the opening reception, the award ceremony, breakfast the next day, and the luncheon.
Okay. Do these conferences move each and every year?
We've had this conference, this is the 11th,
okay,
since 2007. Now, if you count, you'll notice that there have been more years than 11 since 2007. But during the Great Recession of 2008, 9, and 10, we did not, 9, 10, and 11, we did not do the conference. It was pulled. but it was so popular and there was so much demand to bring it back. In 2012, we brought it back after 3 years and have been doing it every year since.
Okay. You know what, ladies and gentlemen, it's 5:51 p.m. here in the heart of Gary, Indiana. This is Northwest Indiana. Today is Extreme Sabor Latino, and we are talking to Deborah, who is the Vice President, Publisher for Radio Inc. and other major projects, and a major, I guess, a woman of power and influence in the radio industry. So who should go to this Hispanic Radio Conference?
Anybody who is in Hispanic radio, anybody who is competing with Hispanic radio. This is who the target is insofar as our audience is who we focus on and build the agenda for. And that can be management, sales, executive level programming, because by the way, we cover we have a great programming session as well that will be presented there on the future of what formats within Hispanic radio. It's all not one format, but what are the formats of the future, and how's the best way to manage and to maximize
those. In terms of just your projects, the Radio Inc. and the other projects that you involved with, well, let me just ask you this: what do you have planned for Radio Inc. down the road?
Well, we have a lot planned insofar as again, we do 14 issues a year, so and we recognize a lot of people throughout the years, the top 40 most influential, the most influential women. We're about to. I just signed off today on the video for the Medallas de Cortez Award. Basically, just to continue to grow and keep a pulse on the radio industry, on the audio industry, and continue to grow and serve our readership. I want to say listeners, because after 40 years of radio, I still think in terms of ears, not eyes.
Right.
In Radio Inc., is there a section in the magazine that would allow or has, let's say, letters to the editor or some kind of opinion page coming from from other radio hosts or something like that?
Those are normally online daily news because the magazine is what we consider evergreen, and usually comments are based on something, shall we say, current events or a current topic going on. So those are usually placed online. We usually don't print those in the magazine.
Okay. Is there, well, actually it's about 5:54 p.m. here in Gary, Indiana. Is there anything you would like to pass on to our viewers or streamers in terms of what you do in Hispanic radio? Well, that maybe you want to pass along at this moment?
I believe that we have a lot of people. I had a boss one time tell me, the people in radio are primarily good people, and they really are. My hat is off to you and Eve and every broadcaster, everyone who opens the mic, because of what you do in serving the communities that you live in, and that are so much a part of you. Whether in times of crisis, like recently in Dayton last August, I don't know if you remember, but we had a mass shooting here in one of our beloved districts, our Oregon district. And the way the station banded together and allows our community the opportunity to express their grief, express their frustration, their rage, their sadness, and everything else. It's unfortunate these are the times that these things get highlighted in particular. But day in and day out, every time a mic is open, some lives are being touched. And I think that if your listeners, first of all, to keep listening, that radio it serves an important aspect of their lives. But to those who aspire to those careers, it's a noble profession. It's not easy. Nothing is anymore. It's not, as we all know, and jobs are harder to find in this profession. But if you really love it and have a passion for it, you got to go for it, because you'll never be happy if you don't.
Deborah, one last question, and if I may, Mr. Scott, if you can hold on one more minute. Deborah, if we can take one more minute here, what is the future of Hispanic radio?
I think the future of Hispanic radio, like all of radio, it really depends. It's in the hands of the companies and the people that own it. There is a future. We have, without getting into too much here, because I know you haven't got a lot of time, but we are actually splintering into two entities. We have the big companies that are going to operate like your major groups that are doing more AI and are more voice tracking and not into the localism. But there are many, many companies, many stations, over 10,000 radio stations are owned by people that are not major companies. There is an opportunity there to write your own future, but it all depends on the ownership and what direction they want to take it in.
Sure.
Radio is 100 years old this year. No
wow.
one company has ever defined its future. No one company should be allowed to.
Right, right. Oh, that's good to know.
And on that note, we want to thank Deborah.
Yes,
and pronounce your last name again. I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's Parenti.
Parenti. Deborah, we've been talking with Deborah Parenti, who is the Executive Vice President, Publisher of Radio Inc. and many other projects, talking about radio, talking a little bit about podcasting, and about Hispanic radio. On that note, Eve?
Well, thank you so much, Deborah, Ms. Parenti, for coming on our show, and I'm sure they won't be the last time. Continue to keep moving forward and pressing on for the community and for the good, the greater good.
And on that note, thank you very much,
Mr.
Scott, for manning the radio.
I'll be calling in live tomorrow. Deborah. On location over there in, I think it's Oak Lawn, or it's on Roosevelt Road, Bedford Park, I think that's considered. And so tune in at 10 a.m. I'm going to give to 5 callers a discount. So they got to listen to tomorrow. Let's start building your credit, rebuilding your life for a better future. Peace to you. Nos vemos.
Thank you.
Hasta la próxima. Yep. See you guys till next time.
Thank you, Scott.
Nos vemos. Acá. Over here. Say goodbye.
Adios.
And nos vemos.
Sayonara.
And for our Facebookers, hope you enjoyed that